We hope each and every one of you is having a wonderful Easter weekend. And if you're not celebrating, hopefully you're just having a wonderful weekend. And we know if you're a Chicago Bulls fan, you have not enjoyed not just this weekend, not just this past week, but heck, the entire season and the second half of last season, whether it was bad news from Lonzo Ball or this team just didn't gel. DeMar DeRozan wasn't playing. Zach LaVine had a bad knee. It has just been one thing after another, and we've been covering it here on the Sports Cubicle with the marvelous one, Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, and myself, Mike Mercado. But the bad news keeps coming because while they did clinch themselves a game after the regular season, it's going to be the play-in, and it's not just any play-in matchup. They will be playing, most likely, the Toronto Raptors. While, as of this recording, there's only 2 games left for the Chicago Bulls, it looks like the 10-9 matchup in the Eastern Conference will be Chicago and Toronto, and the 7-8 matchup will be the Atlanta Hawks and the Miami Heat. And we're going to concentrate on the Bulls there, but just for sake of keeping things even, in the Western Conference, the 9-10 is Minnesota, Oklahoma City, and the 7-8 is the Los Angeles Lakers, who, watch out, it's crazy. The Western Conference, I think a lower seed could end up winning the finals this year, and the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, Marvel, I know you know this, but this is still somewhat new for NBA fans, basketball fans. So the way this works is if 9-10 stays the same, which it looks like it's going to be, the winner of that game will have to play the loser of the 7-8 matchup. That winner of the 7-8 matchup will actually be meeting the Boston Celtics, the number 2 seed at this point, as they will take the 7th seed. The Bulls, if they find a way to beat the Toronto Raptors, and then either the Heat and the Atlanta Hawks will end up in the 8th seed in a rematch against the Milwaukee Bucks. So it doesn't get any easier. You already know you can't beat the Hawks without Trae Young. You know you can't beat Milwaukee without Giannis and Chris Middleton. So, Marvelous, I know you love, the only thing you love more than playing basketball is interleague play in April for 2 random teams. I mean, we love basketball. We love extra basketball, but this is ridiculous as a Bulls fan.
Well, yeah, the play-in tournament was initiated during COVID, and they should have left it there, in my view, because it's a 1 game, and anything can happen. So they're going to go up to Toronto. So I hope they have all their proper international travel papers to go up to Toronto for 1 game, and then I guess they'll maybe have a day off or so, and then probably go down to Miami or Atlanta. So those will both be on the road. So they'll have that, and then if they win those 2 games, then they have 2 road games in Milwaukee before they come back home.
So it'll only be 2 games. You're right, Marvelous, because they're not winning any one of those games in a 7-game series.
Well, they managed to last year, but we'll see what happens. It doesn't, if their game in Chicago, as we're speaking from Wednesday, is any indication. It's going to be kind of sad. It was 105-92 when they played the Bucks on Wednesday, and they just were, DeRozan had a total of 8 points.
That's crazy.
So that wasn't very optimistic. So we'll see what happens. But I had said on an earlier show that I'd almost prefer them to be number 11, but that's not what's happening.
Yeah, no, you want to be in the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not going to happen. So it's the worst possible combination of factors. So I can't imagine they're going to end up playing Milwaukee, but it's possible. Those 2 wins on the road, I mean, against Toronto and either Miami and Atlanta, seem improbable. But stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I mean, stranger things happen on Netflix. I don't know if they're going to happen on the United Center or in this place over in Canada, and then either in Atlanta or Miami, because you've mentioned it. This is just, we've seen how they played against these teams that aren't at full strength. And then the conversation that is going to be had over these next few days is whether or not you rest these players come Friday and Sunday heading into the play-in. It doesn't matter. I mean, it really doesn't matter. Look, you might sneak a game against Toronto because, like we said, it's a 1-game thing. And if Patrick Beverley has shown us anything is possible in the play-in tournament. But then you have to go out and beat either a Miami team or an Atlanta team. And just for clarification, in the Eastern Conference, Brooklyn clinches a playoff spot with a Miami loss coming up as of April 6th. But Miami might clinch a division title with a win, and Miami is already locked in a playoff game with a loss. So essentially, we still don't know if the Brooklyn Nets are going to play into this. And even if then that's the case, I still don't trust the Bulls. It may be better odds playing Brooklyn than you would against Miami. But even that being the case, best case scenario, you beat Toronto and now you got to beat Brooklyn. Like, do you still feel good about that? So I think one of the interesting conversations about all of this, and I know it's looking to the future, and that's a fool's errand when it comes to this Bulls team because they're so handcuffed. But I think we're looking into next season because they might run this exact thing back.
Mm-hmm. In answer to the thing about the players, the current plan, according to Coach Donovan, is to rest the core of their starters against Mavericks on Friday, get everyone back to keep a rhythm Sunday in the regular season finale against the Pistons. So that's what the plan is. So not that it's going to matter much because I mean, after all, Milwaukee was shorthanded last night. So and that's what's staring in the face if you win your 2 road games. The only advantage of Brooklyn is you wouldn't have to travel so far from Toronto to Brooklyn.
Sure.
So I don't know. It's a crazy setup. It seemed like a 1-year deal back when they did this, but they've kept it, and it makes it interesting for the teams that are in the, it's 9 and 10 spots because their season would have been over otherwise. So, and the only weird thing about it is that it's a 1-game series essentially. So team gets hot. It's kind of like the NCAA. You could have the Bulls could be like Florida Atlantic.
Yeah, go on and win 2 straight just to get demolished by Milwaukee. But you bring up an interesting thing about this play-in tournament. I think it was great for the COVID season. I think it's intrigue if you have seasons where teams deserve it. Like if you look at the Western Conference, right? Like the play-in tournament is pretty interesting on that end because Minnesota is 40-40 in the 9th seed. And OKC as the 10th seed is 38-42. Same record as the Bulls as of this recording. But OKC is playing way better basketball than the Bulls are. They deserve to be in the conversation, in the hunt. They deserve to kind of be there and to have some excitement there. That fan base does. I would be more intrigued, more in for the play-in tournament if it was only the 9 and 8 seed. That the 9th seed gets a 1-game wild card against the 8th seed. And then at that point on, it's the playoffs. The idea of like a double jeopardy and round robins and one win, like that's too much for teams that normally don't deserve it. The NBA is real. There's a lot of parity in today's NBA, but most teams don't deserve the 2nd and 3rd and 4th chance to get into a playoff just to maybe win 1 game against Milwaukee. There are exceptions to the rules, but imagine if you take away OKC. Fine. All right. That's a little bit of a bummer, but you take away OKC and you take away Chicago. You still have Minnesota and a either Miami or Atlanta or a Toronto team that are still pretty interesting. They might make things a little bit more interesting. So I think you can maybe maneuver a little bit, maybe adjust rules. I think the plan can work if it's something closer to that, where at least there's some real competition between the teams.
You're right. I mean, maybe the next step would be to put everybody in and have 2 play 15.
Honestly, yeah.
And then let Milwaukee be the only one that gets a bye.
I think there is something to that though, where like the NBA already has a lot of teams that make the playoffs, and this play-in tournament really just kind of exposes the bottom dwellers when they are bad, like the Bulls.
Yeah, I mean the only argument is that a team had a bad spell, and gives them a chance to maybe get hot late in the season and do some magic, like the Connecticut Huskies were like that in basketball. In the NCAA, they had a bad spell in the middle. They won a bunch of games at the beginning, won a bunch of games at the end, and they became the champions. So that can happen too. But the NBA, it's a lot harder, I think, than in college basketball.
Well, I mean, you saw what happened with LSU, the Lady Tigers. You saw what happened with UConn with the men's Huskies. You've seen this in both tournaments, more the men's tournament than the women's tournament, but you've seen this a lot where lower seeds teams go on runs and whatnot. So let's correlate that a little bit to the play-in. Will a play-in team ever win the NBA Finals? I know that seems crazy, but let's be fair to the actual play-in. If you look in the Western Conference, if I tell you right now that the LA Lakers are going to go to the finals and they somehow beat the Milwaukee Bucks, will that not be like, now mind you, they're not a true play-in team because 3 years ago they're just a 7th seed, right? Like it's just whatever. But now that they're technically a playing seed, do you actually ever see the equivalent of a 12th seed winning the NCAA tournament? Do you ever see a team going from the 9th seed, the 10th seed, all the way to the NBA Finals and all the way to hoisting the Larry O'Brien Trophy?
I thought that might have been a possibility when Golden State was further down the line this year, but now they're up there in the, doing a lot better. I think they're like fifth or something like that, fifth or sixth. But other than that, no, it's not going to happen. If you, even looking at history, it hasn't happened in the short history of the play-in tournament. So it doesn't bode well for the Bulls. They'll get some playoff basketball, and maybe nothing at all at home. If it goes, if they manage to win in Toronto, then they have another road game. So I mean, it's going to be tough. It's a tough road for the 10th team, but they've made their bed. Now they have to sleep in it.
Did you know? And I want to get your thoughts really fast on both the national championship games, but did you know that none of the stats roll over in the play-in games? Those stats disappear. So if you drop 100 points, it disappears on your record. Like that's so. Like I wonder. Let's just say Zach LaVine scores 100 points. It doesn't go into his overall record of points scored in the league, but does that count as a 100-point game? Is that enough? Because and this is where it starts. I'm not a stickler for records and rules, but like the NBA has so few of records that we hold dear, right? Nobody cares about the rebound leader. Nobody even really cares about the points leader, but we care about games and moments and like they did this in their performance. What happens if you have an all-timer like when Michael did against the Boston Celtics? What happens? Like, do we count that? Do we treasure that? Do we, because say what you will about the baseball's wild card, all of it matters. All of it counts. It's all part of your playoff record. So I thought that was just a little weird.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it counts for something. Yeah. But I mean, it's not going to, your season average is not going to be affected by the playoff. But I mean, in a player's history, I believe that there's a category for playoff scoring too.
Yeah, it's for playoffs.
Yeah, but it's going to be different. So I hear you. Yeah. So I don't know.
It's weird.
Yeah, it is. I don't think. And Will Chamberlain scored 100 points before there was a 3-point shot, but he didn't shoot any 3-pointers either.
Don't get me started about what some of these cats could have done had they had the 3-pointer.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Like, what if some of these defensive, like Draymond Green was able to hand check people? How much more of a monster he would be. It's crazy to think how much the game has evolved. But Marvelous, we have a few minutes left. And, we're going to obviously wrap it all up back with the Bulls. But really fast, your quick thoughts on what you saw in both the men and women's side as we saw and crowned 2 new champions. A lot of controversy, a lot of BS controversy because it's ballers balling out on the court. It is what it is. Like, if you don't like it, if you're scared, get a dog. But 2 deserving champions and some awesome moments from a lot of different teams in these 2 tournaments.
Oh, yeah. I saw that the Connecticut San Diego State game was the lowest rated.
That's crazy. How crazy is it that the women's tournament killed it?
It's quite possible that the Iowa LSU might have been the highest rated. I didn't see the stats on that, but I'm sure it had very high ratings. And I wasn't aware of the fact that the Iowa Clark is a junior, I believe.
Yeah, I
believe he comes back next year. So we were thinking about getting him in the pro league here in Chicago, getting her in the pro league here in Chicago, but it's not. I don't think that they leave after their junior year in the women's game like they do.
Yeah, I don't think it's as frequent
in the men's, but I guess she could, but I don't think she is. But I thought that was quite very interesting. I thought San Diego State would lose. I thought Iowa might have a chance to beat. I didn't know that much about LSU, and there was a little bit of controversy after the game with people pointing at ring fingers and whatnot. But it's much ado over nothing. But I think that I'm looking for Iowa to be a strong team in the tournament next year now, knowing she's back. So that's something to look forward to in the women's game. But I mean, San Diego State very easily could have been beaten by Creighton.
Yeah.
In the round of 8 because they had got fouled in the last second of the regulation. So things can happen like that. Sometimes it's somebody beats somebody before you play them. Ergo, Florida Atlantic didn't have to play Purdue.
Right. Yeah, it's just a little bit of draws where the tournament falls.
They played Fairleigh Dickinson instead. So I mean, sometimes it works out that somebody gets beat, and you get a team that got a good win, and they're not quite as talented. So the breaks go that way too. But I always say it isn't always the best team that wins the NCAA tournament. It's a team that's hot and gets breaks in a one and done type situation. That's the way it is. And Connecticut was worthy. It was funny to me that the Big East fan, I mean, Marquette looked like the dominant team in the Big East, and Xavier and Creighton looked pretty strong, and Connecticut was strong, and then not so strong, then strong. So they finished in fourth place, but they were the best team at the end of the year, although they did lose in the championship game of the postseason tournament to Marquette. And so that's what happens in a tournament. That was, by the way, it was Jim Nance's final NCAA tournament. Iron Eagle will be taking over. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that's the end of an era there. It's a good 30 years he's been doing it. So there's a passing of the torch. I think he's still going to do football.
Yeah.
But he's taking a leave from NCAA. Which will be interesting to see what happens, because they've had Raftery there for quite a few years too, and so he looks like he's getting a little bit up there in years too. I don't know his exact age, but there may be some more changes coming up in the Final Four announcing booth. We'll see what happens.
It's a changing day in the media market, and it's a changing day in the booths, and there's just a new age coming upon us when we listen to Super Bowls now and World Series, and now Hello Friends will only be in the Masters. So it's a whole
right. But it's also, to me, there isn't even in Chicago now. We have our TV announcers are kind of like, in a way, carpetbaggers because they have a very big presence in the national stage. Both of them. Shambi, for the Cubs, obviously works ESPN. He's never around on Sundays, and now it looks like there's going to be a bigger role on Fox for the Sox TV announcer. He's going to be doing, Benetti. He'll be doing baseball even on Fox. It looks like so, and he got a prominent role. Yeah, he was doing a lot of college games too, basketball. He may be in the rotation, for the different announcers that do the NCAA tournament now.
We've always talked about it. Yeah. I mean, we're fortunate. Like, I know a lot of us, even from my generation and then older, we come from like having the hometown guy be your call. Yeah. And then every once in a while, a city would have like a Kevin Harlan or whatever be their main guy. But usually Chicago was able to hold on to it. It's kind of nice knowing that we are the kind of the Mecca now. Like, if you put on a Bulls game, even though they're bad, you got Adam Amin. If you're listening to Benetti, if you're listening to a Boog, it's just and then you go on the radio side, and the radio side is world class. So like from Joniak to Casper to Pat Hughes, it's like, it's crazy. Even the Blackhawks, like it's one of those things that I think we take for granted. But I think all in all, what I've learned from this tournament is, besides like the men's, I think men's more now than ever, it's just going to be up in the air. There's going to be years where there's dominant teams, but for the most part, I think it's just going to be like, we're just going to have to see how the dominoes fall. When it comes to the women's side, I think more than ever, like, it's awesome that Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark got beef, even if it's just basketball beef, which is awesome. Yeah. That's what we want, because in the pro game, we see too small, can't guard me, can't see, like, this is part of it. This is part. Heck, we do it in radio. I want my points to be a better take than my, what I'm saying? Like, it's part of it. And that's what this game needs on that level. We know in the Marvelous household how endearing it is for women's basketball and whatnot. That's that's where we build the foundation. We build the player up to be respectful of the game. But when we get to the
everything's competitive. Level,
it's on.
Everything's competitive. Even the business world is competitive in banking, for example. Everybody wants to be number one on the chart.
So let them play, let them go at it, and let them do their craft that they're great at, and enjoy their show. Because guess what? It was the best of the two tournaments. But on that note, we know that not only was the women's tournament better than the men's, it's probably going to be better than this Bulls run, but we'll be covering it all the same. For the Marvelous One, Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, myself, Mike Mercado, we want to make sure that you guys are enjoying the Easter weekend, whether you celebrate it or not. Be safe. Make sure you take care of yourself and each other, and have a wonderful weekend. For the Marvelous One, Dan Marver, for Devin Tingle, for Paul Chivari, I'm Mike Mercado. We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV.